Brothers and sisters, welcome back to another episode of the Behaviour Revolution Scriptures, where we are making straight, making easy, making simple, making 21st century colloquial easy slang the scriptures, so on the sound of babbling lips we can make it more user-friendly, the scriptures, because we want this eternal blood covenant of deliverance to be easy to understand for our children, for our families, for anybody who comes along that's interested. We're not going out there with a big mission, because that's not what we're called to do, particularly in this dangerous time we live in. But anybody who does come along, who feels something around us, who senses something in our behaviour, who might be crying out for something in their life, anybody who Yahusha, and it's all about Yahusha, whoever Yahusha is waking up. And Yahusha is only waking up his bride, and Yahusha knows who his bride already is. And we're seeing the pattern of this happening in the days of Noach. Remember, we looked at Noach, and everything that happened in the days of Noach is happening today. Giving each other in marriage and partying and drinking and eating and doing all sorts of drunken debauchery and partying. And look at the world today. Even in Israel itself, it's worse than a lot of other countries. The depravity that's going on in the world today. And that's just above the surface. Imagine what's going on underground. And I'm not just talking about the clubs. I'm talking about deep underground. There's all sorts of abominations being formed underground to put on, so that unclean spirits can put on flesh. Shaitan wants to come through. So that's all very interesting. We're going back to Abram again today. Last episode we left off where Abram had just had a covenant cut with him by Yahusha, who walked between the animals himself. Abram and Yahusha didn't walk through. So even though it was an agreement between two people, it was more of a promise. And Yahusha promised this. And Abram was the mediator of this covenant, and Yahusha promised that he would give him land, because he was a king without a kingdom. He had all these possessions and family, but no land and no son. So we're going to go into that today too. Remember when Abram lost his belief for a moment there and went into Egypt to find food, and the plagues came on Egypt and the Pharaoh kicked him out. He took with him an Egyptian slave, an Egyptian servant named Hagar. That's where we're going to pick up today. Hagar and Ishmael. After living in Canaan for 10 years, Sarai, Abram's wife, was still unable to have children. And remember, Yahusha had promised Abram that he was going to have as many children as the stars in the sky, remember? In 10 years, they still haven't had one child. And they're getting pretty old too. So Sarai was still unable to have children, and in a hurry to kickstart Yahusha's promises, she brought her exotic Egyptian servant Hagar to Abram, saying, Yahuwah clearly doesn't want me to have children, so if this blessing is going to work for us, you'd better have a child with her. Then at least I can be encouraged and blessed through my servant. And Abram agreed and took Hagar to be his wife. And after sleeping with her, she fell pregnant. Hagar then began hating on Sarah straight away, having it all over her that she was more fruitful, a better wife, and was more loved because she was able to give Abram a child. You can understand that, can't you? Picture that in your mind. These women were at each other's throats. Sarai took all this behaviour from her servant very personally and was furious at Hagar. So then she went to dump her emotions on Abram, saying, This is all your fault, Abram. I only gave her to you so we could finally have a child, and now look how she treats me, just because she's eating for two. I can't stand this woman. Do something about her. But Abram said, No, this isn't my fault. She's your servant, darling. You have the relationship and the power over her, so you do what you feel is right with her. And Sarai said, Fine. Yahuwah will judge which of us is right. She's a fiery woman, this one, isn't she? And Sarai treated her servant so horribly that Hagar ran away from her into the wilderness, where Yahusha comforted her and instructed her to return home and put up with Sarai's abuse and behave humbly and correctly to her. Sounds like letting her have it, doesn't it? Just let her have it. She's your boss. She's your master. Let her have it and watch what I do. That's the whole purpose of letting someone have it. Let them have it and watch what I'm going to do, Yahusha says. Not you. You don't get back. You don't compete. You don't argue. You just let them have their madness. Let them have their opinions and watch what I'm going to do in this situation, in this communication. So, put up with her abuse, behave humbly and correctly, saying, you're going to have lots of children, my daughter, and look, you're about to have a son now, and you shall call him Ishmael, because I have heard your suffering. Your son will be a very wild man, a savage, stirring up conflict and violence with his brothers and everyone. And Hagar rejoiced greatly because she had been comforted by Yahusha, and she named the well that she rested at 𝗪𝗚𝗪𝗚. And when Abram was 86 years old, Hagar gave birth to Ishmael, his first son. He became a father at 86 years old. Abram becomes Abraham, a renewed name and a renewed blood covenant. Remember, same covenant made with Abram, with Noach, with Abram, with Abraham, same covenant. Yahusha's just filling it up, not so much fulfilling, but he's making it more and more, giving it more meaning, adding little bits to the covenant, making it more personalized to the land, to this person, to that. And then of course, he's preparing their mind, washing their mind so that when he comes along, they're ready for him and he can fully fulfill and fill up. That's what fulfill means, fill up the covenant. Not completely destroy the covenant with something different. Fill up the covenant. This whole covenant that started from Adam is still alive today. So, 13 years after the birth of Ishmael, another 13 years, Sarai still hasn't had a child. Yahusha appeared to Abram once again saying, I am Yahuwah, 𝔹𝕙𝕤𝕗. 𝔹𝕙𝕤𝕗, what does that mean? Mighty one of the mountain, that's what it means. 𝔹𝕙𝕤𝕗 means mighty one or mighty Elohim, Elohim of the mountain. Come walk before me and behave perfectly. I am renewing my blood covenant I made with you, my son, and no longer will you be known as Abram, exalted father, for I'm changing your name to Abraham, father of many. This all means something, guys. Now it's time to begin increasing your family so that you become the father of nations. Yes, kings and priests shall come from your loins, and my eternal blood covenant of deliverance will be for all of their generations too. For I am giving your descendants all of this land of Canaan as an eternal inheritance, and I will reign over all of them, blessing and protecting them. So now that his name has changed to Abraham, he's giving his descendants the land of Canaan. But in the last video, we saw Abram getting his descendants the whole land from the river of Egypt all the way over to the river Euphrates, which of course is the Middle East, and all those people are descendants. Because we've got Ishmael on the scene now too. And while Ishmael was not the covenant son, he still was the father of a nation. And after renewing Abram's name, Yahusha also renewed his blood covenant with Abram, saying, this renewed blood covenant between me and you has terms, Abraham. So he's bringing it more now, bringing consequences and terms to the covenant. Covenant in the beginning didn't have much terms. Yahusha walked between the pieces, remember? Taking on the role as the mediator and the payment. If something happened to the covenant, he would take on the punishment. But now this covenant, this renewed covenant, has consequences. This renewed covenant between me and you has terms, Abraham, and involves the seed from your loins. So, animal blood will not seal the deal here. The first covenant was made with animal blood, but this covenant is way too important to have animal blood. So for this, far too important. Where am I? And so animal blood will not seal the deal here, for this is far too important. So much so that you and all the men in your household, whether slave or free, are to circumcise the flesh of their foreskins and be partakers in the shedding of blood as a sign of my eternal blood covenant with you. So not only have we progressed from animal blood now, we're going to human blood had to be shed. Can you see how this is filling up the cup, filling up the covenant, filling it up, making it more meaning? Every time the covenant is renewed, it gets fuller and fuller. We've gone from animal blood now to the blood of mankind, because they were to be partakers of this covenant. It's just not my covenant, mate. You got to be involved in this covenant too. So to show me that you're partaking of this covenant, you've got to shed your blood, not just the animal blood, the blood of your willy, mate. You've got to imagine an adult cutting his foreskin off as an adult. So this is the sign of my eternal blood covenant with you. So, and it's interesting that this covenant revolves the seed of his body. The covenant in the last chapter involved the seed of Abraham's body, which at that point was only Ishmael. Ishmael was born from the seed of his uncircumcised loins. Your loins are your genitals, your penis, that's your loins. And it was uncircumcised when Ishmael was born. So Ishmael is an uncircumcised, uncovenant person, people, nation. Now we have a covenant, a circumcised Abraham, a circumcised Abraham. So therefore any seed that comes from his body, any sperm that comes from his body, passes through the circle. Remember, covenant circle? Remember when he cuts our hearts with a love for the covenant? Circumcision, circle, circumcise the penis. He cut the foreskin off. So any sperm that passed through that circumcision was sealed in the circumcision. That was the whole point of it. So any seed that came from his body would be passed on as a covenant people. Did that make any sense? So let's go on. This is the sign of the blood covenant, this circumcision. So every male born into your household is to be circumcised after 8 days. For any male found in your household that is not showing the sign of my blood covenant in their flesh will be cut off for being disobedient. Indeed, all the multitudes of nations that are produced from your circumcised flesh shall be born into my eternal blood covenant of deliverance. It is your responsibility to guard my instructions and my covenant, Abraham. Behave perfectly and do not call your wife Sarai anymore, for she is to be renewed in this covenant too. And you shall now call her Sarah, which means princess. For I am about to bless her with a son. Yes, she will give you a son, Abraham. And kings and priests shall come from her body. They certainly will. So, you're going to have a son, Abraham. And Abraham fell on his face and cracked up laughing, saying to himself, how on earth will a child be born to me when I'm 99 years old? Or Sarah, who is 90? And Abraham said to Yahusha, that's just crazy talk. Just let my son Ishmael carry this promise for you. We're way too old to have a child now. But Yahusha said, no, Abraham, your wife Sarah is to have a son, and you will call him Yitzhak, or Isaac, Yitzhak. And I will continue my eternal blood covenant with him also, and with his descendants. And don't worry about your son Ishmael, for I have heard your request, and I know that you love him very much. So I will bless him also, and he shall be a mighty nation, bringing forth 12 princes. However, I will continue to establish my blood covenant through Yitzhak, who Sarah will give birth to next year. So for us, it's easy for us to say, yeah, the covenant went through Yitzhak, and Ishmael, yeah, he was just a loser, whatever. But Abraham didn't feel like that about his son Ishmael. It was up until the story, it's the only son he had. He loved this boy with all his heart. It was his only son. So that's why he said, do we have to do this all again, Father? Can't we just make Ishmael the covenant son? No, that's not my plan. Your wife is to have a son. You'll call him Yitzhak. Because this son had to come through Abraham's circumcised flesh, circumcised member. And that's why the land, that whole big, where is it here? Look, this land here, this promised land given to Abram, an uncircumcised Abram. So all the nations that came from Abram's uncircumcised, and it's not just Ishmael, he had a couple of other wives too. And they had descendants too. So all this land he was given to the uncircumcised Abrams, the nations that came from him. But the land of Canaan given, which we later know was the 12 tribes of Israel, came from Abraham's circumcised flesh. So Abraham got to it. After Yahusha had finished speaking to Abraham, he immediately took his 13-year-old son Ishmael and all of the males in his household, both slave and free, and he circumcised the flesh of their foreskin that very day, sealing them all through their bloodshed in the eternal blood covenant, just as Yahusha had commanded. For indeed, this renewed blood covenant of deliverance and relationship, once sealed with animal blood to an uncircumcised Adam, Noach, and Abram, was now made alive. That's what I should have said before. This whole point with the cup, it makes it alive. It fills it up. It makes it alive. It's just not an instruction. It's made alive through the shed blood. So this covenant that was once made to an uncircumcised Adam, Noach, and Abram was now made alive through the cutting away and shed blood of Abraham's own flesh as the mediator, which means he was taking responsibility for it. For his behaviour and obedience pleased Yahusha greatly in his generation. Abram's covenant involved the blood of animals, but Abraham's renewed covenant involved mankind's own blood from their foreskins. So I hope that makes sense, brothers and sisters. It was all about blood, as we know. The blood was the only thing that could seal, cover the sin, the lawlessness, wickedness of mankind. And now the blood was passing on to mankind himself. Mankind had to shed their own blood to be part of this covenant. And it's interesting that it was both slave and free, all Abraham's people, even the slaves. And a lot of his slaves would have been not from the clean, blessed bloodline of Shem. A lot of them would have been, well, we know Hagar was a foreigner. She was from Egypt, from the cursed bloodline of Ham. So a lot of these people were a mixed multitude. They would not have all been Hebrew people, but they were still invited and able to be sealed in this covenant through their obedience. And we know that's the same today. It doesn't matter what bloodline you're from, if you are grafted into the covenant. There was only one covenant, and there was only one people that were chosen to be kings and priests of that covenant, and that was the nation of Yisrael, not the physical nation today. It's a people in Yisrael today is those who are the bride, guarding the covenant and the words of Yahusha. So this idea of the mixed multitude being allowed to graft into Yisrael, being allowed to graft into the covenant at this point, Yisrael wasn't an entity yet, but the mixed multitude was allowed to come along if they were obedient. If they behaved and came into the instructions, they were invited and able to partake of the blessings. Because remember, the whole point of it was to be protected. The earth was so savage and unsafe and violent place. Yahusha's protection meant a lot. And Yahusha promised not only blessings and inheritance, but protection and safety as well. So if you want to be partaking of that, you had to be part of the Hebrew covenant, Abraham's covenant. It's Yahusha's covenant, actually. So let's go on. Yahusha and his messengers. One afternoon, while Abraham was sitting in the doorway of his tent, escaping the afternoon heat under the terebinth oak trees in Mamre, Yahusha appeared to him. Just like that. Abraham looked up and saw Yahusha standing there with two of his messengers right in front of him. And in sheer excitement, he jumped up to greet them, bowing himself on the ground, saying, "Please, Yahuwah, let me find favor in your eyes today. Come and join me under these lovely trees. Let me wash your feet and let us break bread and feast together. Please don't go, my master. Stay, don't go." Because Yahusha had appeared with his two messengers, and they could disappear at any moment. And he desperately wanted him to stay. Stay, Father, stay, don't go. And Yahusha said, of course we'll stay. Get everything ready, Abraham. So Abraham ran into the tent and told Sarah to make some bread cakes for their guests. Then he ran to his herds, found a good calf, telling his servants to prepare it along with their finest curds and milk. Soon after, Abraham set it all out in front of their guests under the trees and stood by them as they ate. So he allowed them to eat, because that was the role of it. That was how you felt about guests back then. You were incredibly hospitable. You looked after the guest that was under your roof. So he stood by while they ate and watched them and talked with them. Where is your wife, Sarah? Yahusha asked. Over in the tent, Abraham replied. Well, I've got exciting news for you, Abraham. Next year, at the appointed time, Passover, I will return to you, because your wife Sarah is going to have a son. And Sarah, who was listening at the tent door right behind them, laughed to herself, for she knew she was way too old to have children anymore. And she mocked inside herself, saying, now he decides to bless me with children. Now he decides to bless me with children and give me some pleasure, now that I'm so unbelievably old. As if that will ever happen, especially since my husband is so over the hill too. And Yahusha said to Abraham, why does your wife laugh, saying she is far too old to have children? Is anything too hard for me? Can't I do anything? I'm telling you that at the appointed time next year, I will return to you and Sarah will have a son. The scripture says Sarah was saying this inside herself, mocking inside herself, in her thoughts. What does that say about Yahusha and our thoughts? He can read your thoughts. And Sarah lied, denying that she laughed, making excuses for her behaviour of unbelief, because she chose to be afraid. But Yahusha said, no, you did laugh, letting her know that he could see her most innermost feelings and thoughts. Which he can. He knows all our innermost feelings and thoughts, our intentions, our motives, our desires, our thoughts and plans. Abraham, the negotiator. Yahusha and his two messengers rose up after the meal and looked towards Sodom, and Abraham walked with them to see them off. And Yahusha said to his two messengers, I'm going to tell Abraham what I'm going to do to Sodom and Gomorrah, since he serves and follows my instructions and teaches his family and everyone within his camp to guard all that I've taught him. I know the thoughts of his heart, that his behaviour is clean and perfect in his generation. So Yahusha spoke to Abraham. It has come to my attention how perverse and depraved the people of Sodom and Gomorrah are. Cruel, violent gluttons, living a constant wickedness in my face day and night, with no generosity or compassion for the poor. So we are heading there right now to destroy them. It's interesting that he says that, because it wasn't just because of their perversity. Most people use Sodom and Gomorrah to condemn sodomy, homosexual lifestyle. That wasn't the reason. It was a big reason, but it wasn't the only reason he decided to destroy these cities. It was because of their behaviour, not only their perverse behaviour, but they were cruel. They were ruthless and cruel. And back then, in this culture, it was clean behaviour to look after one another. You know, like the Good Samaritan, the story Yahusha told. You didn't have to know someone to be kind to them, to be generous, to look after somebody. And they weren't doing this. They were cheating. They were torturing. They were really cruel and violent and hostile towards strangers that passed through their gates. And we see that happen later on. They tried to rape him, the messengers that appeared under Lot's roof. So this was another reason too. Their ruthless, horrible behaviour, cruel, aside from the sexual. So it has come to my attention how perverse and depraved these people are. They're doing this in my face day and night, no generosity. So we're heading there right now to destroy them. And the two messengers headed off towards Sodom, but Yahusha stayed back to chat with Abraham, who was shocked by this news. Are you serious, my master Yahuwah? What if there are 50 people in the cities that walk according to your instructions? Will you destroy all the good people with the bad? You are the creator of all the earth and the skies and the judge over all. So does that seem fair to you? And Yahusha said, okay, my son, if I find 50 people who walk with me in Sodom, then I will spare the city and not destroy them. Imagine Yahusha saying that to me here on the tablelands. If I can find 50 people on the tablelands or 50 people in Cairns, or just think about your own neighbourhood, brothers and sisters. If Yahusha said to you, if you can find me 50 people who are walking uprightly and obeying my instructions, then I won't destroy your neighbourhood. What would we say? Take it now. Let's go. Destroy us all. There's nobody. There's on the tablelands here, there's me and my family. That's it that I know of. And down in Cairns, we've got Christopher and Victoria. And that's all that's in Cairns. So it's very rare, and I'm sure it's like that in your neighbourhoods too. There's not many people, brothers and sisters. The bride is scattered. So Yahusha says, okay, if you find 50 people, I won't destroy the cities. And Abraham said, I know I'm nothing and no one. Who am I but dust and ashes of the earth to speak to the mighty Yahuwah like this? But what if there are 5 less than 50 people? Would you destroy the whole city for the sake of 5 less? It's getting a bit mad, isn't it? And Yahusha said, fine, if I find 45 people with behaviour that pleases me, I will spare the city. And I've summarised here because he goes on and on and on. Abraham's going a bit crackers here. He goes on and on and on. What if you find 30? What if you find 25? What if you find 20? He just goes on back and forward, back and forward. And this negotiation went back and forth for a while until Abraham had pleaded with Yahusha to spare the city of Sodom if he found only 10 people who followed his instructions. 10 people who followed his instructions. And I'm going to leave it there, brothers and sisters. That's enough for today. Next video, we're going to go into Sodom and Gomorrah and all the consequences of their behaviour. And so I hope you understand. For me, going through this, I mean, I knew what a covenant was, yeah. The everlasting covenant made at Mount Sinai. But no, that was just a reminder. That was a renewal of the covenant. The covenant was made. The covenant is the instructions. Don't let the word covenant baffle you. The covenant is an agreement. That's just all it means, an agreement. A handshake, agreement, like we do today. That's what a covenant is. And the Torah, or the commandments, are just instructions, just doing what Yahusha says. So let's bring it into 21st century colloquial terms and say that this covenant, Yahusha's instructions, were being taught to Adam and Ḥawwa from the very beginning. And so because mankind, under the influence of Ⅎ was being bombarded to disobey Yahusha's instructions, he started to bring it in and bring life to it. And so each time he renewed the covenant, he added more to it. He made it more fuller and more life. He made it alive. That's the thing that I didn't understand for many years about Abram and Abraham. The name change, it wasn't just a change of name. It was a renewing of the covenant. And so mankind was now responsible to be a part of the covenant themselves by shedding the blood of their foreskin. I can tell you, in a land where people are so fixated on the phallus, I think Yahusha has a little bit of a sense of humour on as well. Because they were worshipping trees and they were worshipping the phallus and, you know, the dick festivals and everything that was going on. As all form of their sun worship. So for him to then say, I'm setting you people apart and I'm circumcising the skin. So they had to go through a bit of pain and it would have taken them a while to heal. But then their seed, the significance of it was the seed that passed through was about the descendants of a covenant people. And remember, he's building back up. We're trying to get back to the Garden of Eden here. That's the whole purpose of these scriptures. If in one word it was, get us back to the Garden of Eden. We want to get back to the Garden of Eden. We want to see into the other dimension. We can't see you, Father. We want to have you again. We want you to be with us. Not only was he going to be with them, which we'll see shortly, he's now in us. We are now the tabernacle made with hands. not made with hands. We are the tabernacle not made with hands. Yahusha's tabernacle. We are the living dwelling place of his Shekinah, his esteem, his essence. His Ruach lives inside us. So I'm getting a sore throat now. I'm going to stop now. And I love you, brothers and sisters. I hope you're enjoying and finding this easy. That's my purpose here. Make it easy. Kiss. Keep it simple, stupid. That's what I'm doing here. So stay strong, brothers and sisters. Love you. Bye-bye.
What do you get when you take the Torah and mix it up with sun worship? A hybrid beast, 𝗪𝗏 worship, circus of lies and apostasy. The world is blind, can't see the bondage. They won't wake up, they're chained to filth. Religion waits for a man of evil, but few do know he's been and gone. He came, he saw, he changed the Torah and fooled us all. He brought about a new decree and put the world on bended knee. Oh, he was a monster, Constantine monster. He was a monster. He changed the times. Didn't you know the evil is spreading across every nation? The Constantine monster in every home. Yeah, he changed the times, the seasons too. He changed the times, the seasons too. The pontiff saints and sacraments, and now her daughters spread darkness. He changed the times, the seasons too. He changed the times, the seasons too. The pontiff saints and sacraments, and now her daughters spread darkness.